I stood in the hallway, frozen by the sound of my parents' laughter coming from the kitchen. My father joked that he sometimes wished they only had one child, and my mother agreed without a second of hesitation, saying I always made the atmosphere feel heavy. That 3-second conversation cost me my entire world. I did not say a word. I just walked out the door and stayed gone for 3 months. My name is Jean Hayes, and for the last 29 years, I have existed in the periphery of my own life. I am not the main character. I am not the villain. I am the extra in the background of a family portrait who accidentally blinked when the shutter clicked, ruining the shot just by being there. People often say that you cannot choose your family, but they rarely mention the corollary, which is that your family does not get to choose you either, and sometimes they resent you for it. It was a Tuesday in late October, the kind of day that hangs suspended between the dying heat of summer and the sharp bite of autumn. I was working at Blue Crest Fulfillment, a sprawling warehouse complex just outside of Richmond, Virginia, where the air always smelled of corrugated cardboard and packing tape. My job was simple, repetitive, and numbing. I picked items from shelves, scanned them, and put them into bins. Beep, grab, scan, bin, beep, grab, scan, bin. It was a rhythm that allowed my mind to go blank, which was exactly how I liked it. I was supposed to work until 6 in the evening, but around lunchtime, my coworker Sarah approached me. She looked frantic, her eyes wide and rimmed with red. Her daughter had come down with a fever at school, and her husband was out of town. She needed someone to cover the rest of her shift later in the week, so she could leave early today. But the supervisor would not approve it unless she swapped with someone immediately. I looked at her, saw the desperation that I never saw in my own mother's eyes, and I offered to take her late shift on Friday if she took my remaining hours today. She nearly hugged me. I told her it was fine. I told her to go. So there I was, clocking out at 2 in the afternoon on a Tuesday. It felt illicit, like skipping school. The sun was still high and bright, casting long, sharp shadows across the concrete parking lot. My car, a gray sedan that had seen better days and sounded like a dying lawnmower when it idled, was baking in the heat. I sat inside for a moment, hands on the burning steering wheel, and felt a strange little bubble of optimism in my chest. I was going home early. The house would be quiet. Maybe I could surprise them. Maybe I could cook dinner before anyone started complaining about how tired they were. I decided to stop at the supermarket on the way. It was a pathetic little attempt at bribery, and deep down, I knew it. I was 29 years old. Living at home to save money after a rent hike pushed me out of my apartment 6 months ago, and I was still trying to buy my parents' affection with groceries. I walked the aisles of the store, the fluorescent lights humming overhead. I picked up a gallon of 2% milk because Dad complained if we ran out. I grabbed a carton of organic eggs, the expensive kind Mom swore tasted better, and then I walked to the frozen section and picked up 2 large pizzas, pepperoni and sausage, Ryan's favorite. Ryan is my younger brother. He is 26, charming, effortless, and currently finding himself while working part-time at a surf shop. Even though we live 3 hours from the ocean, when Ryan buys a frozen pizza, it is a fun treat. When I buy groceries, it is just expected. It is rent. It is the tax I pay for taking up space. But today, I thought, maybe it would be different. It was a Tuesday afternoon. We could eat early. We could talk. I drove the rest of the way home with the windows down, letting the wind whip my hair around. The neighborhood was quiet, the kind of suburban silence that feels heavy and judgmental. Lawns were manicured to within an inch of their lives. Flags hung limp on porches. I pulled into the driveway and turned off the engine. My parents' cars were both there. Dad must have taken a half day. And Mom worked from home on Tuesdays. Perfect, I thought. I gathered the plastic grocery bags, looping the handles around my fingers until they pulled taut against my skin. The milk was heavy. The pizzas were cold against my wrist. I walked around to the back door, the one that led directly into the mudroom off the kitchen. I did not want to make a grand entrance. I just wanted to slip in, put the food away, and maybe start the oven. I unlocked the door. The mechanism was well oiled. I had fixed it myself 2 months ago because Dad kept forgetting to call the locksmith. It opened without a sound. I stepped into the mudroom. The air inside was cool and smelled faintly of lemon polish and coffee. It was the smell of my childhood, a smell that usually made my stomach tighten in anticipation of a critique. "Jean, why are you wearing that?" "Jean, did you gain weight?" "Jean, when are you moving out again?" But today, there was no critique. There was just voices. I froze. The door from the mudroom to the kitchen was open. Just a crack. My parents were sitting at the kitchen island. I could hear the clink of a spoon against a ceramic mug. I could hear the rustle of a newspaper. It was an intimate, domestic scene. "Pass the sugar, would you?" my father said. His voice was relaxed, warm. It was the voice he used for guests, or for Ryan. "Here," my mother said. "Did you see the email from the insurance company?" "Yeah, I'll handle it later," Dad replied. There was a pause. A long, comfortable silence stretched out, the kind of silence shared by two people who have spent 30 years together. Then, my father spoke again. His tone shifted slightly, becoming thoughtful, almost philosophical. "You know," he said, and I could picture him leaning back in his chair, looking out the window at the bird feeder. "It is nice when it is just us. And Ryan, of course, when he is around," my mother hummed in agreement. "It is peaceful." My heart hammered against my ribs. I should announce myself. I should walk in and say, "Hi, I bought pizza." I should make noise, but I did not. I stood there, clutching the plastic bags, paralyzed by a sudden, instinctive dread. "Sometimes," my father said, letting out a short, dry chuckle. "Sometimes I wish we had stopped at one. Just the one child." The air left my lungs. It was not a violent exit. It just simply evaporated. I stood there in the mudroom, staring at the sliver of light coming through the doorframe. "Oh, stop," my mother said, but her voice lacked any real admonishment. It was light, teasing. "I am serious," Dad continued. "Think about how much simpler it would have been, financially, emotionally." "Well," my mother said, and I heard the sound of her sipping her coffee. "You are not wrong about the atmosphere, John. Jean just always makes the air feel heavy, you know? She walks into a room and everything just sinks." "She is intense," Dad agreed. "Always has been, even as a kid. Just staring at you with those big eyes, waiting for something." "Ryan is easier," Mom said. "Ryan is like oxygen. Jean is, I do not know, carbon dioxide?" And then they laughed. It was not a villainous laugh. It was not the cackle of evil step-parents in a Disney movie. It was worse. It was a genuine, comfortable, relaxed laugh. It was the laughter of two people bonding over a shared truth. They were not trying to be cruel. They were just being honest with each other in the privacy of their own kitchen. They truly, genuinely believed that their lives would be better, lighter, and happier if I did not exist. I was not a person to them. I was an atmospheric condition. I was humidity. I was a drafty window. I was a burden that they had grown accustomed to carrying, but a burden nonetheless. The plastic handles of the grocery bags were cutting into my circulation. My fingers were turning purple. The cold condensation from the milk carton dripped onto my shoe. Drip, drip, drip. I counted the seconds. 1, 2, 3. Inside my head, something shattered. It did not make a sound. It was not an explosion. It was the sound of a structural beam finally giving way after years of termite damage. It was the sound of the last thread snapping. I looked down at the bags in my hands. Milk, eggs, pizza, the currency of my desperation. I could walk in there. I could throw the milk on the floor. I could scream. I could demand to know why they hated me. I could cry and beg them to love me. But then I remembered what my mother had just said. Jean always makes the air feel heavy. If I walked in there and screamed, I would just be proving them right. I would be the drama. I would be the heavy cloud ruining their sunny afternoon. I would be the problem. No. I slowly lowered the bags to the floor of the mudroom. I moved with the precision of a bomb disposal technician. I did not let the glass jar of salsa clink against the milk jug. I set them down on the mat, right next to the row of muddy boots. I stood up straight. I looked at the door leading to the kitchen. I could still hear them. They were talking about dinner plans now. They were wondering if they should order Thai food since I was working late. I took a step back, then another. I reached for the handle of the exterior door. I turned it, holding the latch so it would not click. I opened the door, stepped out into the afternoon heat, and pulled it closed behind me. Click. The sound was microscopic. They would never hear it over the hum of the refrigerator and their own contentment. I stood on the driveway. The sun was still shining. The birds were still singing. The world had not ended, but my world, the one where I tried so hard to be a daughter, had vanished. I walked to my car. I did not run. Running implied panic. I was not panicked. I was clarifying. I was removing the carbon dioxide so they could breathe. I got into the driver's seat. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from a sudden, terrifying rush of adrenaline. I put the car in neutral and released the handbrake, letting it roll down the driveway without turning the engine on until I was halfway down the street. Then, I started the car and drove. I did not know where I was going at first. I just drove. I drove past the park where I broke my arm when I was 7, and Mom complained about the hospital bill. I drove past the high school where I graduated with honors, and Dad forgot to bring the camera. I checked the fuel gauge, half a tank. I checked my wallet. I had a debit card and $20 in cash. I drove to the nearest bank branch, a small brick building with a drive-through ATM. I inserted my card. My hands were steady now. I punched in my PIN. I selected withdrawal. I selected checking. I stared at the balance. It was the money I had been saving for a deposit on a new apartment. It was everything I had. I typed in the maximum daily withdrawal limit, $500. The machine whirred and spat out the bills, 20s, since the lobby was still open. I parked the car and went inside. I walked up to the teller, a woman named Linda who I vaguely recognized from high school. "Hi," I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, calm, mechanical. "I need to close my account and withdraw the remainder in cash. Please." Linda looked surprised. "Everything? Are you sure, Jean?" "Yes," I said. "I am switching banks. Better rates." It was a lie. But lies came easily now. I was a ghost. And ghosts do not have to tell the truth. She processed the transaction. It took 10 minutes. She handed me an envelope, $243.50. "Have a nice day," she said. "You too," I replied. I walked back to my car. I had $743.50 to my name. It was not a fortune. It was barely a survival kit, but it was mine. I got back on the highway and headed north, then realized that was where everyone went. D.C., Baltimore. No, I needed to go somewhere they would not look immediately. Somewhere mundane. I saw a sign for the bus station. I took the exit. I parked my car in the long-term lot. I left the keys in the ignition. I left the registration in the glove box. I wanted them to find the car eventually. I wanted them to know I did not crash. I did not get kidnapped. I walked away. I walked into the terminal. It smelled of diesel and stale coffee. I went to the ticket counter. "Next bus leaving the state?" I said to the man behind the glass. "One way." He looked at me, bored. "I have got a Greyhound heading to Raleigh, North Carolina. Leaves in 20 minutes. Trip takes about 3 hours. "How much?" I asked. $42, he said. "I will take it." I handed him the cash. 320s. He gave me the change and a printed ticket. I sat on a hard plastic bench and waited. I did not check my phone. In fact, I took my phone out of my pocket. It was an older model. The screen slightly cracked. I went to settings and turned it off. Then, I walked over to the trash can near the vending machines. I hesitated for only a fraction of a second. This phone was my tether. It was my connection to Maya, my best friend. It was my connection to the few people who might actually care. But it was also a tracking device. It was a leash. I dropped the phone into the trash. It landed with a dull thud on top of an empty soda cup. "Boarding for Raleigh," the loudspeaker announced. I stood up. I had no luggage. I had no toothbrush. I had no change of clothes. I had the clothes on my back, jeans, a t-shirt from the warehouse, and sneakers. I had an envelope of cash in my back pocket. I walked out to the platform and climbed the steps of the bus. I chose a seat near the back, by the window. The engine rumbled beneath me, a deep, vibrating growl that felt like a beast waking up. As the bus pulled out of the station, I watched the city of Richmond slide past the window, the familiar streets, the skyline. It all looked like a movie set being dismantled. I thought about the kitchen. I thought about the pizza sitting on the floor of the mudroom. By now, the cheese would be thawing. The milk would be getting warm. Dad would eventually ask, "When is Jean getting home?" Mom would check her watch and say, "Probably soon. She is always slow." They would wait. Then they would get hungry. They would eat whatever they could find. Maybe they would find the bags in the mudroom and be confused. Why did she leave these here? Mom would say, "So irresponsible." They would call my phone. It would go straight to voicemail. They would be annoyed. Then, maybe, by midnight, they would be worried. But right now, at this exact second, they were happy. They were enjoying the lighter atmosphere. They were breathing the easy air that Ryan provided. I leaned my head against the cool glass of the window. I closed my eyes. I did not cry. I expected tears, but there were none. There was only a vast, empty silence where my heart used to be. "Goodbye," I whispered. Not to them, but to the Jean Hayes who stood in the kitchen doorway hoping to be seen. She was gone. She died in the mudroom, strangled by a plastic bag handle and a casual wish. The bus accelerated onto the highway, merging into the stream of traffic. I watched the speedometer climb. 50, 60, 70. I was disappearing at 70 miles per hour, and for the first time in my life, I felt light. Raleigh, North Carolina, smelled like rain and asphalt when I stepped off the bus. But Maya Rourke's apartment smelled like lavender fabric softener and burnt toast. It was a smell that anchored me, a sensory reminder that I was no longer in the vacuum of my parents' house. I had arrived at Maya's door at 11 at night. 3 hours after leaving my life behind in a trash can in Richmond. I did not call ahead because I had no phone. I simply knocked. When Maya opened the door, wearing an oversized t-shirt and boxer shorts, she did not gasp. She did not scream. She looked at my empty hands, then at my face, which must have looked like a map of a war zone where the treaty had just been signed. "Okay," she said. That was it. Just okay. She stepped aside and let me in. For the first week, I slept on her beige microfiber couch that had a permanent dip in the middle. Maya lived in a complex that was mostly populated by graduate students and young professionals who were just starting to realize that adulthood was a scam. The walls were paper thin. I could hear the neighbor to the left arguing about whose turn it was to walk the dog, and the neighbor to the right practicing the cello. It was a symphony of other people's lives, and it was the most comforting sound I had ever heard because none of it had anything to do with me. Maya was a graphic designer who worked from home, her desk cluttered with dual monitors and empty coffee mugs. She respected the silence I brought with me. She did not ask why I had no luggage. She did not ask why I flinched when her phone rang. She just put an extra pillow on the couch and told me the Wi-Fi password was lowercase 1234. I needed to disappear. But I also needed to survive. The $700 in my pocket would not last forever. On my second day, I walked to a discount electronics store and bought a cheap prepaid smartphone. It was a burner, a black rectangle of plastic that felt toy-like compared to my old device. I paid cash. Next, I walked to a bank, a different chain than the one my parents used, a credit union that catered to state employees and locals. I opened a basic checking account with $50. The banker, a man with a kind face and a tie that was too short, asked if I wanted to add a secondary authorized user. "No," I said, my voice flat. "Just me. Only me. I needed a job, but I could not use my resume. My resume had my address on it. It had references that would lead back to Richmond. It had a digital footprint. So, I went to a day labor agency in downtown Raleigh. It was a place where you showed up at 5 in the morning, stood in a line, and got assigned to whatever manual labor was available that day. For the next 3 months, I became a pair of hands. I unloaded trucks at a distribution center, lifting boxes until my shoulders felt like they were filled with broken glass. I swept construction sites, inhaling drywall dust until I tasted chalk for days. I washed dishes in the back of a greasy diner where the humidity was so high, my hair frizzed into a halo. It was grueling, mindless work, and I loved every second of it. When you are carrying 50 pounds of lumber, you do not have time to think about your mother's voice. When you are scrubbing burnt lasagna off a pan, you do not have the mental capacity to replay your father's laughter. I was a machine. I clocked in. I worked. I clocked out. I got paid. I was waiting for the grief to hit me. I was waiting for the moment where I would collapse in the shower and sob like they do in movies. But it did not come. Instead, I felt a strange, hollow numbness. It was as if someone had reached into my chest and unplugged the main cable. I was operating on battery power, functional, but dim. In the evenings, I would sit on Maya's fire escape, staring at the parking lot. I had logged into my old social media accounts on the burner phone. But I did not post. I created a ghost account, a blank profile with no photo and a fake name, just to watch. I navigated to the family group chat. I had left the group on my old phone, but I could still see the history if I logged into the desktop version on Maya's laptop, which I did when she was sleeping. I expected panic. I expected, "Jean, where are you?" I expected, "Has anyone seen Jean? Call the police." Day 1. Nothing. Day 3. My mother sent a photo of a casserole she made. New recipe. Too much cheese? Day 7. Ryan sent a meme about a cat falling off a table. Dad reacted with a thumbs up emoji. 2 weeks went by. Then 3. They did not know I was gone. Or rather, they knew I was not there physically, but they assumed I was just being Jean, sulking, acting out, staying in my room, or avoiding them. They were so used to ignoring my presence that my absence felt exactly the same to them. I scrolled through the chat history. My eyes dry. Did anyone feed the dog? Ryan, don't forget your dental appointment. Look at this sunset. It was a stream of consciousness from a family that remained perfectly intact without me. I was not a load-bearing wall in the house of Hayes. I was just a piece of furniture they had moved to storage, and they had not even noticed the empty space on the floor yet. Thanksgiving came and went in the chat. They discussed the turkey. They discussed who was bringing the wine. My name was not mentioned once. I sat in the dark of Maya's living room, illuminated only by the blue light of the screen, and I felt myself becoming transparent. If a tree falls in the forest and no one hears it, does it make a sound? If a daughter disappears and her parents do not notice, did she ever really exist? The numbness held for 89 days. On the 90th night, it broke. It was a Tuesday. Fittingly enough, Maya was out on a date, and the apartment was quiet. I was hungry, deeply hungry, in a way that had nothing to do with food. I went to the small pantry and found a jar of peanut butter. It was Jif, creamy. My mother only bought Jif. She said the generic brands were too oily. When I was a kid, if I was sad, she would make me ants on a log. Celery with peanut butter and raisins. It was one of the few memories I had of her trying to comfort me. I opened the jar. The smell hit me first. Roasted peanuts, salt, sugar. It smelled like the kitchen island. It smelled like safety. I took a spoon and scooped out a large dollop. I put it in my mouth. The texture was thick and cloying. It stuck to the roof of my mouth. I tried to swallow, but my throat closed up. Suddenly, I was 6 years old again. Waiting for my mom to look at my drawing. I was 12. Waiting for my dad to come to my piano recital. I was 29. Standing in the mudroom with bags of milk. Listening to them wish I was never born. The jar slipped from my hand. It hit the linoleum floor with a heavy thud, but thankfully it was plastic and did not break. I slid down the front of the cabinets until I hit the floor. I curled my knees to my chest, and then I gasped. A horrible, ragged sound tore out of my throat. It was not a cry. It was a physical expulsion of pain. I cried until I could not breathe. I cried until my ribs ached. I cried for the little girl who tried so hard to be good. And I cried for the woman who realized that being good was not enough currency to buy love. I cried because they were eating dinner right now, probably laughing, and they did not miss me. The front door opened. Maya walked in. She saw me on the floor, curled around a jar of peanut butter, gasping for air. She dropped her purse and was on the floor beside me in 2 seconds. She did not hug me immediately. She put a hand on my back, grounding me. "Breathe," she said. "Jean, look at the stove. Tell me what color it is." "White?" I choked out. "Look at the fridge. What color?" "Silver." "Okay. You're here. You're in Raleigh. You're safe." I leaned into her, and she wrapped her arms around me. I soaked her shirt with snot and tears. I told her everything. For the first time in 3 months, I spoke the words aloud. I told her about the warehouse. I told her about the pizza. I told her exactly what my father had said. Sometimes I wish we had stopped at one, and how my mother had laughed. I waited for Maya to offer the platitudes that people always offer. "Oh, they were just venting. They love you really. You should call them." Maya pulled back and looked me in the eyes. Her mascara was smudged, but her gaze was sharp. "They are monsters," she said. The validation hit me harder than the grief. "They did not look for me," I whispered. "It has been 3 months. Maya, they haven't even sent a text asking if I'm alive." Maya sat back against the cabinet, pulling her knees up. "Jean, listen to me. They do not miss you because they have not needed you yet. You were their convenience. You were their emotional punching bag. People do not miss the punching bag until they need to hit something." "That makes it sound worse," I said. "It is worse," she agreed. "But it is also the truth, and the truth is the only thing you can build a floor on. Everything else is quicksand." She reached out and squeezed my hand. "They will remember you. Trust me. The moment something breaks, or something costs money, or something requires effort, they will remember you, and by then, it will be too late." That night, I did not sleep. I sat at Maya's kitchen table with a notebook and a pen. I was done being a ghost. Ghosts are passive. Ghosts haunt places because they cannot move on. I was not dead. I was very much alive. And I needed to figure out who Jean Hayes was if she was not the daughter who makes the air heavy. I wrote a header at the top of the page. Assets. I looked at the blank paper. For a long time, I could not think of anything. I had spent my life believing I had no value. I am good at organizing. I wrote, I have good handwriting. I can make things look expensive even when they are cheap. I am patient. I can carry 50 pounds of lumber. I looked at the list. It was meager, but it was a start. I wrote another header. Things I want. A door with a lock. A phone that doesn't track me. To never hear that laugh again. To be someone they cannot afford. The next morning, I decided to take the next step in reclaiming my identity. I needed to see exactly how much damage my disappearance had caused, or not caused. I needed to check my financial standing. I had been terrified to do this, afraid that accessing my records would somehow alert them. But Maya showed me how to use a VPN on her computer. I navigated to a free credit reporting site. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I typed in my social security number. I typed in my birth date. The page loaded. A circle appeared with a number in the middle. 720. It had dropped. It used to be 780. I scrolled down to see why. I looked at the open accounts section. There was my old student loan, almost paid off. There was the old car loan that was closed years ago. And there, at the top of the list, was a new entry. Goldman Sachs /Apple Card. Status, open, date, Opened, November 14th. I stared at the date. November 14th. I had left home on October 29th. This credit card had been opened 2 weeks after I disappeared. My blood ran cold. I clicked on the details. The balance was already at $3,000. The address on file was my parents' house. I sat back in the chair, a bitter taste rising in my throat. Maya walked into the room, holding 2 mugs of coffee. She saw my face and set the mugs down quickly. What? Did they file a missing person report? I laughed. It was a dry, jagged sound, devoid of humor. No, I said, pointing at the screen. They did not file a missing person report. They filed a credit card application. I looked at the screen again. The utilization was high. Someone was spending money fast. They think I am just gone, I said, my voice shaking with a new kind of fury. They think I am sulking somewhere, or maybe they do not care where I am. But they care about my credit score. They knew I had good credit. They knew I was not there to stop them. Who opened it? Maya asked, leaning in. Your mom? Or Ryan, I said. Or Dad. Does it matter? They are all in that house together. They are all complicit. I thought about the conversation in the kitchen. Jean always makes the air heavy. Apparently, I was heavy enough to burden with their disdain, but light enough to steal from the moment I turned my back. I looked at the date opened again. November 14th. That was around the time Ryan had mentioned wanting a new gaming setup in the group chat. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. The sadness that had overwhelmed me on the kitchen floor the night before began to crystallize. It hardened. It cooled. It turned into something sharp and metallic in the center of my chest. They did not just wish I didn't exist. They were actively betting on my silence. They were counting on the fact that Jean, the doormat, would never check, or would never dare to complain if she did. They were using my name like a resource they were entitled to harvest. What are you going to do? Maya asked quietly. I opened my eyes. I looked at the credit report. I looked at the balance of $3,000 that I did not spend. I am not going to call them, I said. I am not going to scream. I reached for the mouse and closed the tab. I am going to let them max it out, I said. And then, I am going to introduce them to the consequences. I stood up. I felt different. The ghost was gone. The machine was gone. I was awake, and for the first time in my life, I was dangerous. The glow of the computer monitor was the only light in the room. It was 3 a.m. Maya was asleep in the next room, breathing the heavy, rhythmic breath of the innocent. I was awake, and I was dissecting the corpse of my financial identity. I had the credit report open in one tab and the transaction history for the unauthorized Apple Card in another. I had managed to log in by resetting the password using my email address, which they had thankfully been too lazy or too arrogant to change. They probably thought I would never check. They probably thought Jean the Ghost did not need a credit score. I scrolled through the billing cycle. It was a digital autopsy of my family's greed. November 16th, Best Buy, $1,240. November 20th, The Cavalier Hotel, Virginia Beach, $850. November 22nd, a deposit for Premier Event Rentals, $500. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned. These were not random purchases. They were specific. They were personal. I have never spent more than $50 on a pair of jeans. I have never stayed at a hotel that cost more than $100 a night. And I certainly did not buy high-end electronics. November 16th. That was 2 weeks after I left. That was likely a new gaming console or a television. Ryan had been complaining about his frame rates for months. The hotel charge made my stomach turn. The Cavalier was expensive. It was romantic. It was the kind of place you went for an anniversary, or perhaps a celebration of an engagement. I picked up my burner phone. My hands were cold, not from the temperature of the apartment, but from a chill that started in my marrow and worked its way out. I dialed the customer service number on the back of the digital card image. "Thank you for calling," the automated voice chirped. "Please say the reason for your call." "Verify address," I said. I navigated the menus until I got a human being. He sounded tired. His name was Marcus. I need to verify the billing address on the file, I said. I am traveling and I want to make sure my replacement card goes to the right place. It was a social engineering trick I had read about online. Act like you belong. Act like the owner. For security, can you please state the current address on file? Marcus asked. I took a breath. I recited the address I had walked away from 3 months ago. The house with the nice porch, the house with the kitchen island where I was discussed like a weather pattern. That matches, Marcus said. Did you want to change it? No, I said. That is all I needed. Thank you. I hung up. The confirmation should not have surprised me. Yet it hit me like a physical blow. It was one thing to suspect them of indifference. It was another to confirm they were actively committing a felony against me. They were not just ignoring my existence. They were capitalizing on it. I sat back in the chair and rubbed my temples. How did they do it? Opening a credit card requires a social security number. I had never written mine down for them. I kept my card in a lockbox under my bed. A lockbox I had taken with me? No. I froze. I had left the lockbox. In my rush to leave, in my desperation to escape the suffocation of that house, I had grabbed my cash and my clothes. I had left my birth certificate. I had left my social security card. But even before that, I remembered a conversation from last year. It was a Sunday. My mother was at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers. She looked stressed. She called me over. Jean, honey, I am updating our life insurance policies. I want to make sure you and Ryan are listed as beneficiaries properly. Can you just write down your social for me? I can never remember it. I had given it to her. I had written it on a yellow sticky note. I had handed over the keys to my identity because I thought she was trying to protect my future. I thought she was being a mother. She was not protecting my future. She was securing her backup plan. The next morning, I did not go to the warehouse. I called in sick. I put on my cleanest pair of jeans and a button-down shirt I had found at a thrift store. I took a bus downtown to a community legal aid center that Maya had told me about. I sat in a plastic chair in a waiting room that smelled of floor wax and anxiety. When my name was called, I walked into a small office. The nameplate on the desk read, Mrs. Higgins, Credit Counselor. Mrs. Higgins was a woman in her 60s with glasses on a chain and a look that said she had seen every variety of financial ruin the world had to offer. She did not smile, but her eyes were kind. Sit down, honey, she said. Tell me what is happening. I did not cry. I laid it out like a police report. I told her I had left home. I told her about the notification on my credit report. I told her about the address match. Mrs. Higgins listened. She took notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she adjusted her glasses. We need to pull a full Tri-Bureau report, she said. The free sites are good for a snapshot, but if we are looking at fraud, we need to see the whole picture. Experian, TransUnion, Equifax. She typed on her computer. The printer in the corner whirred to life. It spat out page after page. It sounded like a machine gun firing in slow motion. Mrs. Higgins picked up the stack. She flipped through the first page, then the second. On the third page, she stopped. Her finger traced a line of text. Miss Hayes, she said, looking up at me. Did you buy a car recently? No, I said. I take the bus. Did you co-sign for a car? No. She turned the paper around and slid it across the desk. There is an inquiry and a new installment loan opened on December 1st, she said. Ford Motor Credit. It is a co-sign on a loan for $45,000. Primary borrower, Ryan Hayes. The room went silent. The hum of the air conditioner seemed to drop out of existence. Ryan, my brother, who made the air easier to breathe. My brother, who was the oxygen in the house. He had bought a new truck. I knew exactly the one he wanted, a Ford F-150. He had been talking about it for years. He did not have the credit history for it because he missed payments on his credit cards constantly. Dad usually bailed him out, but Dad had limits, so they used me. They used my 780 score to get Ryan his dream truck. They forged my signature. They probably sat at the kitchen table, laughed about how I was not there to stop them, and signed my name on the dotted line. $45,000, I repeated. The number felt heavy in my mouth. It was more money than I made in a year at the warehouse. It is a serious offense, Mrs. Higgins said softly. This is identity theft. It is fraud. If we file a police report, your brother, and whoever helped him, could face jail time. She watched me closely, waiting for the reaction. She expected me to panic, or to defend them, or to break down, but I did not break. I felt a strange, cold clarity settle over me. It was like the surface of a frozen lake, hard, unyielding. If I went to the police right now, I could blow their lives apart. I could have Ryan arrested. I could have my parents charged as accomplices. It would be a nuclear option, but nuclear explosions are messy. They leave fallout. They make you look like the aggressor to the outside world. Oh, poor Jean. She finally snapped and sent her own brother to prison over a mistake. No, I did not want to be the crazy daughter. I did not want to be the villain in their narrative. I wanted to be the wall they crashed into. I do not want to file a police report just yet, I said. My voice was steady. It surprised even me. Mrs. Higgins frowned. Honey, if you do not file a report, you are liable for this debt. If he misses a payment, they come after you. I know, I said. I am going to file an affidavit of fraud with the bureaus. I am going to freeze my credit so they cannot open anything else. But I am not calling the cops today. Why? She asked. Because I need to build my case, I said. And because when I take this down, I want it to be airtight. I do not want a he said, she said. I want a paper trail so thick it could choke them. Mrs. Higgins looked at me for a long moment. Then, she nodded. A look of respect flickered in her eyes. All right, she said. Let us start the paperwork. We will dispute the inquiries. We will lock the doors. We spent the next 2 hours filling out forms. I signed my name over and over again, my real signature, not the forgery Ryan had used. When I left the office, the sun was setting. The sky was a bruised purple. I walked to the library down the street. I did not go home to Maya's yet. I had work to do. I sat at a public computer. I logged into everything I could. I took screenshots of the unauthorized Apple Card account. I downloaded the statements. I highlighted the transactions that were not mine. Resort stay, electronics, event deposit. I created a folder on a USB drive I had bought. I named it Evidence. Inside, I created subfolders. Folder 1, Credit Reports. Folder 2, Unauthorized Accounts. Folder 3, The Car Loan. I was thorough. I was meticulous. I was channeling every ounce of the perfectionism my mother used to criticize me for. Jean is so uptight. Jean is so rigid. Well, Mom, you are about to see just how rigid I can be. I printed everything. I wanted physical copies. Digital files can be corrupted. Paper is real. I watched the pages slide out of the printer. Each sheet was a testament to their betrayal. They had not just wished I did not exist. They had erased me and replaced me with a financial resource. They had turned me into a ghost and then tried to sell the sheets I was haunting. I held the stack of papers in my hands. It was warm. I realized then that my silence was no longer a retreat. In the beginning, I had stayed silent because I was hurt. I stayed silent to save myself from falling apart. But now my silence was a weapon. If I called them screaming, they would know I knew. They would scramble. They would pay off the card, hide the truck, gaslight me. Tell me it was a misunderstanding. We were just borrowing it. Jean, we were going to pay you back. Why are you so dramatic? No, I would not give them the chance to spin the story. I would let them dig the hole deeper. Let Ryan drive the truck. Let him think he got away with it. Let my mother enjoy her new television. Let them feel safe. I would wait until the debt was undeniable. I would wait until the fraud was so documented that no amount of family misunderstanding could explain it away. I walked out of the library and caught the bus back to Maya's apartment. When I got in, Maya was cooking pasta. She looked at me, at the thick manila envelope in my hand. "Did you do it?" she asked. "I froze everything," I said. "They cannot open anything new. The tap is turned off." "And the stuff they already opened?" "I have the records," I said. I placed the envelope on the table. It made a heavy, decisive sound. Ryan bought a truck, $45,000. Maya dropped the wooden spoon. "He what?" "He forged my signature," I said. I walked over to the fridge and got a bottle of water. I felt calm, terrifyingly calm. "But I am not going to call him. John, he stole from you." "I know," I said, "and he's going to pay for it, but not with money. He does not have any money. That is why he stole mine." I took a sip of water. "I am going to get my life back," I said. "But I am not just going to take my name off those loans. I am going to make sure that the name Jean Hayes means something. I am going to build something so real, so successful, and so undeniable that they will never be able to treat me like a ghost again." "And the debt?" Maya asked. "The debt is my leverage," I said. "It is the chain around their necks. I am just holding the other end, and when I am ready, I am going to yank it." I looked at the envelope one last time. I was done being the victim. I was done being the atmospheric condition. I went into the bedroom and pulled out my notebook. I turned to a fresh page. I wrote a new header. Plan of action. Step 1. Secure income. Step 2. Build a portfolio. Step 3. Wait for the wedding. I stopped. The wedding. The deposit on the credit card statement. Premier event rentals. $500. Ryan was engaged. That was what the money was for. The truck, the hotel, the electronics. He was setting up his new life with his fiancée. I stared at the words. Wait for the wedding. If they wanted a show, I would give them one, but it would not be the one they were planning. I closed the notebook. I turned off the light. For the first time in 3 months, I did not dream of the kitchen. I dreamed of a gavel coming down, the sound echoing like a gunshot, signaling the end of the session. I was ready to begin. The email arrived on a Thursday morning, exactly 3 months to the day since I had walked out the back door. I was sitting at Maya's kitchen table, nursing a cup of lukewarm coffee and staring at the job listings on my laptop. I had found steady work at a catering company, hauling trays, setting up chafing dishes, fading into the background of other people's celebrations. But I was still checking my personal email, the one I had not deleted. The notification slid onto the screen like a snake entering a garden. Subject: Family check-in/Thanksgiving plans. From Mom to Dad. Ryan. Jean. My finger hovered over the trackpad. My heart did not race. It did not flutter. It beat with the slow, heavy thud of a war drum. I clicked open. Hi, team. Can you believe it is already November? The year has just flown by. I wanted to get a head start on the Turkey Day logistics before the stores get too crazy. Dad is going to handle the bird this year. Fingers crossed he does not dry it out like last time. Haha. Ryan, honey, you mentioned Brianna might be joining us. Please confirm so I can get the head count right. We would love to have her. I am thinking we do the usual sides. Green bean casserole, stuffing, mashed potatoes. Ryan, can you pick up the wine? And Dad needs you to help clean the gutters before people arrive. Jean, if you are around, let us know what your plans are or if you want to stop by. Also, if you do come, can you bring the canned cranberry sauce? The jellied kind. Not the whole berry. Thanks. Love. Mom. I read the email 3 times. Jean, if you are around, if I am around, it was a masterpiece of passive aggression. It was a masterclass in minimization. If you are around implies that I was simply busy. It implies that I was living a few blocks away, perhaps caught up with a new hobby or a demanding project. It completely erased the fact that I had vanished without a trace for 90 days. It ignored the fact that my room was empty, my car was gone, and I had not spoken a single word to them in a quarter of a year, and the request, Can you bring the canned cranberry sauce? It was so mundane it was insulting. Come back to the family that wishes you did not exist. And please bring the condiment that costs $1.50. I looked at the timestamp. She had sent it at 9 in the morning. She was probably sitting at her desk, sipping her tea, feeling productive. She had checked invite daughter off her to-do list right next to buy detergent. I did not hit reply. I wanted to type, I am not around. I am in a different state. I am watching you steal my identity. And no, I will not bring the cranberry sauce. But I didn't. I moved the cursor away from the reply button. I was not going to give them the satisfaction of a reaction. If I replied, even in anger, I was engaging. I was playing my part in their script. I was the difficult daughter causing drama. By saying nothing, I remained a question mark. And question marks are terrifying because you cannot control them. 2 days later, a reply came through from Ryan. Reply all. Yeah, Bree is coming. She's excited. I'll get the wine. Can we do mac and cheese this year? Bree loves it, my mother replied 4 minutes later. Wonderful. I will add mac and cheese to the list. So excited to see her. No one asked about me. No one followed up on the "if you are around" comment. I had been glossed over. I was a footnote in the meeting minutes of the Hayes Family Corporation. I closed the laptop and sat in silence. It was funny, in a dark, twisted way. They were so relieved I was gone. The air really was lighter for them. They could plan their perfect Thanksgiving with the golden sun and his new fiancée without the heavy atmosphere of Jean ruining the vibe. I spent Thanksgiving working. I picked up a double shift with the catering company for a wealthy family in Chapel Hill. I wore a black uniform. I poured wine. I cleared plates. I watched a family that actually liked each other laugh and tell stories. When I got back to Maya's apartment that night, my feet ached. Maya was gone, visiting her parents in Charlotte. I ate a turkey sandwich from a gas station and stared at the wall. I checked the credit card statement again. November 24th, liquor store, $120. November 25th, Kroger, $215. They had bought the Thanksgiving wine and the Thanksgiving groceries on my card. I looked at the sandwich in my hand. I had paid $4 for it with money I earned scrubbing dishes. They were eating a feast paid for with my credit rating. I took a bite. It tasted like sawdust. But I swallowed it. Fuel? I needed fuel. December arrived, bringing with it a cold, gray rain that turned Raleigh into a watercolor painting of misery. The emails kept coming. Subject: Christmas logistics/gift exchange. This time, there was a link. My mother had discovered Google Sheets. I clicked the link. It was a spreadsheet. Rows and columns color-coded in festive red and green. Column A, name. Column B, dish to bring. Column C, gift wish list. I scanned the rows. Row 2, Mom. Row 3, Dad. Row 4, Ryan. Row 5, Brianna. I scrolled down. Row 6 was empty. My name was not on the sheet. In November, I had been an optional guest. In December, I was deleted. It hit me harder than the comment in the kitchen. The comment in the kitchen was impulsive. It was a slip of the tongue fueled by a private moment. This spreadsheet was premeditated. My mother had sat down. She had created the file. She had typed the names. She had formatted the cells. And at no point during that process did she think, I should include Jean. Or perhaps she did think it, and she decided against it. Jean makes things complicated. She probably thought, if we invite Jean, she might come. And if she comes, everyone will be tense. Better to just leave it. They had adapted to my absence with terrifying speed. I was like a vestigial organ, an appendix. They did not realize they did not need me until I was gone. And now that I was out, the body was functioning perfectly. I sat there, looking at the blinking cursor in the empty cell where my life should have been. Row 5. Brianna. She was already on the sheet. She had been dating my brother for maybe 5 months, and she had a row. She had a wish list. I clicked on Ryan's wish list cell. New tires for the truck, PS5 games, gift cards. I clicked on Mom's wish list. Spa day, KitchenAid mixer attachments. It was grotesque. It was a portrait of gluttony painted on a canvas of theft. I was about to close the tab when another email popped up in my inbox. It was from my mother, but it was not addressed to the group. It looked like a forward. Subject: FWD. Order confirmation 89921. Deluxe espresso machine. Message: Ryan. Look, I managed to snag one before they sold out. Brianna is going to love it. Don't tell her. She had meant to send it to Ryan. She had autofilled Jean instead of Jane, her sister, my aunt. Or maybe she just clicked the wrong name in her address book because we share a last name. It was a mistake, a slip of the finger. But the attachment. I opened the PDF of the receipt. Item: Breville Barista Express Espresso Machine. Price: $749. Sold to Martha Hayes. Payment method: Visa ending in 4492. I looked at the number written on the sticky note next to my laptop. The number of the unauthorized Apple Card: 4,492. I stopped breathing. My mother was buying a $700 espresso machine for my brother's girlfriend, a girl she barely knew, using a credit card she had fraudulently opened in my name. She was using my credit to buy affection from the woman who was replacing me. I stood up. I walked to the window. I pressed my forehead against the cold glass. I should have been furious. I should have been throwing things. I should have been screaming until my throat bled. But the anger did not come. Instead, a strange, cold calm washed over me. It was the same clarity I had felt in the credit counselor's office, but sharper, refined. I realized then that I had been waiting for them to apologize. Deep down, in the secret, pathetic part of my heart, I had been hoping that my absence would be a punishment. I wanted them to suffer without me. I wanted them to realize that the house fell apart without Jean there to manage the details. But the house did not fall apart. It got an espresso machine. They were not suffering. They were thriving. They were financing their happiness with the ruins of my future. I turned back to the laptop. I looked at the Google sheet one last time. Row 6. Empty. Okay, I said aloud to the empty room. You want me gone? I will stay gone. But I was not going to disappear into the ether. I was not going to fade away like a ghost story. If they wanted a show, I would give them a show, but I would not be an actor in their play anymore. I was going to be the director. I opened a new document. I typed a new title, The Return. I was not going to go home for Christmas. I was not going to interrupt their dinner. That would be messy. That would be emotional. They would cry. They would gaslight. They would make me the villain who ruined Brianna's first Christmas. No. I needed to appear at a time when they could not make a scene. I needed to appear in a place where they had to maintain their perfect public image. I needed to appear when the stakes were so high that they would be forced to smile and shake my hand while I held the knife to the throat of their reputation. I thought about the premier event rentals deposit, the wedding. Ryan and Brianna were getting married. That was the endgame. That was the grand stage. I looked at the date on the deposit again. June. I had 6 months. 6 months to become someone else. 6 months to build a shield so thick that their words could not penetrate it. 6 months to turn my name, the name they were dragging through the mud of credit bureaus, into a brand they could not ignore. I went back to the email from my mother, the one about the espresso machine. I hit reply. I deleted the body of the message. I did not scream. I did not accuse. I typed 2 words. Nice choice. And I hit send. Let them sweat. Let them wonder if I saw the payment method. Let them wonder if I was being sarcastic or sincere. Let them wonder where I was. I closed the laptop. I walked into the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. My hair was longer. My face was thinner. My eyes were harder. Jean, the daughter, was dead. She died in the kitchen. Jean, the victim, died in the credit counselor's office. The woman in the mirror was someone new. She was a business. She was a liability. She was the reckoning. I picked up my phone and dialed the number for the catering company manager. "Hey, it is Jean," I said. "I want to pick up more shifts. I need to learn everything you know about event setup. I need to know how to run a wedding from the ground up." "Sure, Jean," the manager said, sounding surprised. "We have a big gala next week. You want in?" "Put me on the schedule," I said, "and put me on every wedding you have between now and June." I hung up. I was not going to just crash the wedding. I was going to be the wedding. They wanted to pretend I did not exist? Fine. I would build the very stage they stood on, and when the curtain fell, I would be the one holding the rope. It was a Tuesday in late January, the kind of evening where the sky turns the color of a bruised plum before fading into total blackness. I was sitting on Maya's couch, scrolling through the feed of my ghost Instagram account. I told myself I was looking for design inspiration, maybe some typography ideas or color palettes, but I was lying. I was looking for them, and there it was. My Aunt Jane, the one whose name my mother constantly confused with mine, had posted a photo. It was taken at a restaurant I recognized immediately, the Boathouse, a seafood place on the river where my parents went for special occasions. The lighting was warm and golden. The table was cluttered with empty oyster shells and wine glasses. In the center of the frame sat my parents, beaming with a terrifying kind of vitality. Next to them was Ryan, his arm draped possessively over the back of a chair. And in that chair sat Brianna, holding up her left hand to show off a ring that caught the flash of the camera. They looked perfect. They looked like a stock photo for a retirement investment brochure. They looked complete, but it was the caption that stopped my heart. Celebrating the happy couple. So wonderful to have the whole family together for dinner. Family dinner engaged, bless the whole family. I zoomed in on the empty space between my father's shoulder and the edge of the frame. There was nothing there, just the blurred background of the restaurant. There was no empty chair left for Jean. There was no gap where I should have been standing. The composition was tight. It was closed. I put the phone down on the coffee table. The glass made a sharp clack sound. I stood up. The apartment felt suddenly too small, too hot, too filled with the smell of Maya's lavender fabric softener. I needed air. I needed to feel something that was not the dull ache of erasure. I walked out the door. I did not grab a coat. I did not grab an umbrella. I just walked out into the Raleigh night. It was raining. Not a drizzle, but a steady, freezing sheet of water that soaked through my t-shirt in seconds. The temperature was hovering somewhere around 40 degrees. It was the kind of cold that bites. I walked. I did not know where I was going. I just needed my body to match the temperature of my soul. I walked past the rows of identical apartment buildings. I walked past the gas station where I bought my sad turkey sandwiches. I walked until the sidewalk turned into cracked pavement and the streetlights flickered overhead. My hair plastered to my skull. My sneakers squelched with every step. The water ran down my neck, tracing the line of my spine like an icy finger. People drove by, their headlights cutting through the rain. They probably saw a crazy woman walking without a coat in the dead of winter. They probably thought I was strung out, or just running from trouble. I looked at my hands. They hung at my sides, red and raw from the cold. I flexed my fingers. They felt stiff, stubborn, like they didn't quite belong to me. I watched the water bead and slide off my knuckles. I waited for the tears. I waited for the self-pity to surge up and weigh me down the way it had with the peanut butter. Thick, clinging, hard to swallow, but it didn't come. Instead, something else happened. The cold stopped hurting. It began to feel clean. It felt like armor, walking under the gray wash of the street lamps. I realized I'd spent 29 years trying to get warm enough to melt the ice in my parents' hearts. I tried to be sunny. I tried to be bright. I burned myself out just to give them a little bit of heat, and all they did was complain that I made the air heavy. I stopped walking. I looked up at the sky. The rain hit my face, rinsing away the last of the girl who used to bake cookies just to earn a compliment. I did not need to be warm. Steel is not warm. Steel is cold. Steel is hard. And steel holds up skyscrapers. I turned around and walked back to the apartment. I was shivering violently by the time I got inside, but my mind was steady, quiet, deadly. Maya was still out. I went into the bathroom and peeled off my wet clothes. I dried myself with a rough towel until my skin was pink. I put on dry sweatpants and a hoodie. I sat down at the kitchen table with a notebook and a pen. My hand was shaking from the residual cold, making my handwriting jagged. I started writing a letter. Dear Mom and Dad, I saw the picture. I saw the caption. I saw how happy you are without me. Do you remember the time I stayed up all night helping Ryan with his history project so he would not fail? And you took him out for ice cream to celebrate his B- while I slept in the car? Do you remember when I paid for the new water heater with my savings and you told me I should have shopped around for a better deal? Do you remember that I exist? I wrote for an hour. I poured every slight, every insult, every forgotten birthday, every moment of neglect onto the paper. It was a manifesto of pain. It was a list of debts they owed me that could never be repaid with money. When I was finished, I stared at the pages. They were covered in ink. The words crammed together. I read it over, and as I read, I felt a wave of disgust. It sounded like begging. It sounded like a child crying because she was not invited to the party. Look at me, love me, acknowledge me. I ripped the page out of the notebook, then the next, and the next. I walked to the trash can. I tore the pages into tiny confetti strips. I watched them flutter down into the garbage, landing on top of coffee grounds and eggshells. I went back to the notebook. There was one blank page left. I picked up the pen. I wrote a single line in the center of the page. Stop begging for a seat. Build your own floor. I looked at the words. If they did not want me at their table, fine. I would build a table so magnificent, so exclusive, and so expensive that they would have to make a reservation just to look at it. I needed money. I needed a vehicle for my revenge that was not just a lawsuit. I needed access. I thought about the wedding. I thought about the premier event rentals charge on my stolen credit card. Ryan and Brianna were planning a wedding. Weddings are chaos. Weddings are details. Weddings are thousands of tiny moving parts that need to be organized and beautified, and I was good at details. My mother had called me intense. My father had called me heavy. In the wedding industry, intense is called thorough. Heavy is called substantive. I had $500 left in my bank account. I opened my laptop. I went to Facebook Marketplace. I searched for Cricut machine. I found one used, an older model, being sold by a woman in Durham who was clearing out her craft room. $50. I messaged her. I can pick it up tonight. I drove Maya's car. She let me borrow it for errands, and picked up the machine. It was dusty and smelled like cigarettes. But it turned on. I went to the hardware store. I bought 3 sheets of acrylic. I bought a can of gold spray paint. I bought a pack of white vinyl. I spent the next 3 weeks in a fever state. I worked my catering shifts during the day, observing every wedding I worked. I looked at the welcome signs. I looked at the seating charts. I looked at the table numbers. Most of them were cheap. Flimsy foam board, tacky fonts, misspelled names. I could do better. I came home at night and turned Maya's dining table into a studio. I practiced. I learned how to use the design software. I learned how to weed the vinyl, using a tiny metal hook to pull away the negative space around the letters. It was surgical. It was meditative. I created a portfolio of fake weddings. Welcome to the wedding of Jack and Rose. Please be seated. Sip and be seated. I used my handwriting, the handwriting my teachers used to praise. I digitized it. I made it into a font. It was elegant but sharp. It looked like the handwriting of a woman who takes no prisoners. I took photos of my samples against the white wall of the apartment, using natural light and a few dried flowers I found at the dollar store. They looked expensive. They looked like they belonged in a magazine. I needed a name. It had to sound established. It had to sound soft enough to lure brides in, but strong enough to hold its ground. I looked at the linen curtains in Maya's room. I looked at a bird sitting on the railing outside. A lark, maybe? Or just a sparrow. But lark sounded better. Lark and Linen Studio. It sounded like old money. It sounded like a boutique in Charleston or Savannah. I built a website on a free platform. I uploaded my photos. I wrote a bio that was entirely fictional but emotionally true. Larkin Linen is a boutique design studio specializing in bespoke wedding signage and event details. We believe that your story deserves to be written in stone, or acrylic, or gold. I launched the Instagram page. I followed every wedding planner in Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill. I followed every venue, and then I waited. For 2 weeks, nothing happened. Then, a message. A local wedding coordinator I had followed liked one of my photos. "Hey, I have a bride who is looking for a last-minute seating chart. Her Etsy seller ghosted her. Can you help? Wedding is in 5 days." "Yes," I typed back. "I can help." I charged her $150. It cost me $20 in materials. I stayed up until 4 in the morning making sure every letter was straight. I polished the acrylic until I could see my own reflection in it. Tired, dark-eyed, and determined, when I delivered it to the venue, the planner gasped. "This is gorgeous," she said. "The edges are so clean, and this weight, it feels substantial." "I do not do flimsy," I said. She hired me for 2 more weddings the next week. Word began to spread. In the wedding industry, vendors talk. They talk about who is late, they talk about who is rude, and they talk about who saves the day. I became the girl who saved the day. I was the ghost in the machine of the Raleigh wedding circuit. I was reliable, I was precise, I was invisible, but my work was everywhere. I raised my prices: $300 for a welcome sign, $500 for a seating chart, $2,000 for a full suite. I started paying Maya rent. I bought my own groceries. I bought a better vinyl cutter. I was building my floor, and it was made of acrylic and gold leaf. It was now April. The rain had stopped, and the dogwoods were blooming. I was sitting at my desk. I had bought my own desk now, processing orders. I had 5 weddings in May. I was busy. I was tired, but I was not empty. My email pinged, a notification from the Contact Us form on my website. Subject: Inquiry for June wedding signage. Full suite needed. I took a sip of my coffee. June was busy, but I could squeeze in one more if the budget was right. I opened the email. "Hi there. I found your page on Instagram, and I am obsessed with your style. It is exactly what I'm looking for. Modern, clean, but romantic. I know it is a little late notice for a June wedding, but our original plan fell through. Long story. We need everything. Welcome sign, seating chart for 150 guests, bar menus, table numbers, and maybe some custom signage for the dessert table. Our colors are slate blue and champagne gold. The venue is the Soundside Club in the Outer Banks. Please let me know if you are available. Best, Brianna Cole." The coffee cup stopped halfway to my mouth. I stared at the name, Brianna Cole. I read it again. I checked the email address. Brianna. Cole96@gmail.com. It was her. It was the girl from the photo. The girl wearing the ring that Ryan had bought with a co-signed loan on a truck he could not afford. The girl who was getting an espresso machine bought with my stolen identity. She had found me. She did not know who I was. To her, I was just Larkin Linen. I was just a vendor with a pretty Instagram feed. My heart began to hammer against my ribs. But it was not fear. It was the adrenaline of a hunter who just heard a twig snap. The Soundside Club in the Outer Banks. That was where they were getting married. Of course, it was expensive. It was exclusive. And she wanted everything. I leaned back in my chair. A slow, cold smile spread across my face. It was the first time I had smiled in months. Fate was not just knocking on my door. She was breaking it down and handing me a sledgehammer. I could say no. I could delete the email. I could stay safe in my anonymity, but I did not want to be safe. I wanted justice. I placed my fingers on the keyboard. My hands were steady. My nails were short and clean. I began to type. "Hi, Brianna. Thank you so much for reaching out. I would be absolutely delighted to work with you. June is a busy month, but for a wedding at the Soundside Club, I can certainly make room in my schedule. I have attached my pricing guide. Let us set up a time to chat about your vision." I want to make sure every detail is perfect. Best, Jean Lark and Linen Studio. I did not use my last name. I never did on emails. I hit send. The trap was set. They wanted me to be invisible? Fine. I would be the invisible hand that guided their perfect day straight into the heart of the storm. I looked at the calendar on my wall. June. I picked up a red marker. I drew a circle around the date. Judgment Day. The correspondence with Brianna Cole began with a compliment that tasted like ash in my mouth. Subject: Inquiry for June wedding signage. Full suite needed. Jean! Oh my gosh, I just stalked your entire Instagram feed. Your aesthetic is exactly what I have been dreaming of. I am so tired of the rustic barn look. I want something clean. Something that feels expensive but not loud. Luxurious but minimalist. Can we do that? I sat at my desk, the glow of the monitor illuminating the dark circle of coffee in my mug. Luxurious but minimalist. It was a perfect description for the life my brother Ryan was trying to build. A life that looked pristine on the surface but was hollowed out by debt and deceit underneath. I typed my reply. My fingers moved with the muscle memory of a concert pianist playing a requiem. Hi, Brianna. We can absolutely do that. Minimalism is about removing the noise so the truth can stand out. I specialize in that. I have attached a preliminary contract and a questionnaire to get a better sense of your specific needs. Once the deposit of $500 is cleared, I will start on the digital mock-ups. Best, Jean, Lark and Linen Studio. I did not type my last name. I never did. In the design world, single names were chic. They were a branding choice. For me, it was a tactical necessity. I waited for the ping of the transfer. It came 2 hours later. Payment received. $500 from Ryan Hayes. I stared at the notification. Ryan paid the deposit. Of course he did. And he likely paid it with the very credit line he had stolen from me. Or perhaps he had moved on to a new hustle. It did not matter. The money was in my account now. It was a tiny clawback of what was owed. For the next 3 days, I worked on the designs. I treated this project with a level of obsession that bordered on clinical. I pulled up Adobe Illustrator. I set the canvas size to 24 by 36 inches for the welcome sign. I selected my fonts with the care of a sniper choosing a bullet. I created 3 options. Option A was soft. It used a flowing script font, something romantic and traditional. It was safe. It was the kind of sign that said, "We are sweet and in love." Option B was floral. I incorporated vector illustrations of hydrangeas and peonies, the flowers my mother grew in her garden. It was a subtle nod, a test to see if Brianna would gravitate toward the aesthetic my mother undoubtedly pushed on her. Option C was the blade. For option C, I used a high-contrast serif font. The lines were razor-thin, alternating with thick, bold strokes. There were no flourishes, no curly cues, just stark, unyielding elegance. It was cold. It was modern. It looked like the logo of a law firm that charged $1,000 an hour, or a perfume that smelled like ice. I sent the PDF to Brianna on a Thursday afternoon. Subject: Design concepts for June 12th. Hi, Brianna. Please see the attached concepts. Let me know which direction speaks to you. Best, Jean. Her reply came within 10 minutes. Option C. 100% option C. It is sharp. It is fierce. It looks like... I do not know. It just looks like power. Let us go with that one. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. Power. She had chosen the blade. She had chosen the design that most closely reflected the woman I had become, not realizing she was inviting that energy into her sacred day. I began the production process. I ordered the acrylic sheets, frosted matte, distinct and heavy. I ordered the vinyl in a shade called Champagne Mist. As I worked, weeding the excess vinyl from the letters of their names, Ryan and Brianna, I felt a strange sense of detachment. I was slicing my brother's name with an X-Acto knife, peeling away the negative space, smoothing it onto the plastic. I kept waiting for Brianna to ask. In our email threads, she was chatty. She complained about her florist. She mentioned that her future mother-in-law, my mother, was driving her crazy with guest list additions. "Jean, you would not believe it," she wrote in one email. "Ryan's mom is trying to invite her entire book club. I told Ryan he needs to set boundaries. But he is such a mama's boy. He just rolls over. Does your family do this stuff?" I stared at the screen. Does your family do this stuff? The question hung in the air, heavy with irony. She did not know. She truly did not know. I had been gone for nearly 6 months. Ryan had been engaged to her for at least 4 of those. And in all that time, through all the dinners, all the holidays, all the wedding planning sessions, my name had never crossed their lips. I was not just the black sheep. I was the ghost that they had bricked up behind a wall in the basement. They had successfully curated a reality where Jean Hayes never existed. Ryan was an only child. My parents were the doting couple with one successful son. It was impressive, in a sick way. It required a level of collective discipline that they usually lacked. I replied to her email, "Families can be complicated. My philosophy is that the wedding is about the couple. Everyone else is just scenery." I attached the invoice for the second installment. Amount due, $1,500. I hit send. But being the invisible vendor was not enough. The fire in my belly needed more oxygen. I needed to push the boundary. I needed to see how close I could get to the flame without burning my cover. I went to the blog section of the Lark and Linen website. I had been neglecting it, posting only generic articles about top 5 fonts for summer, or why acrylic is the new wood. I opened a new post. I titled it, "The Architecture of Silence, Why I Design." I began to write. I did not use names, I did not use locations, but I used feelings. I used specific, jagged details that would mean nothing to a stranger but everything to the people who lived in that house. I design because I know what it feels like to be unseen. I wrote, I grew up in a house where the volume was always turned down on my existence. I was the background noise. I was the static. I remember standing in a kitchen with grocery bags cutting into my fingers, listening to the people who made me laugh about how much lighter their lives would be without me. So I left. I walked out the back door and I did not look back. I learned that if you want to be seen in this world, you have to build your own stage. You cannot wait for someone to turn the spotlight on you. You have to be the light. Lark and Linen is not just about signs. It is about making a mark. It is about carving a name into a surface so deep that it can never be sanded away. I posted it. It was a risk, but risks were the only currency I dealt in now. 2 days later, my phone buzzed. It was Maya. "Jean," she said, her voice breathless. "Did you see the link I sent you?" "No, I am working." "What is it?" "Check your text. Right now." I opened the message. It was a link to the Raleigh Daily, a popular local lifestyle and culture website. The headline screamed in bold black text, "From toxic roots to golden blooms, how one local designer built an empire on silence." My stomach dropped. "Maya," I said, "what did you do?" "I have a friend in their editorial department," Maya said, sounding entirely too pleased with herself. "I sent her your blog post, Jean. They loved it. They called it haunting and visceral. They ran a feature. I clicked the link. There was my story, paraphrased, quoted, and glorified. They painted me as a mysterious figure, a phoenix rising from the ashes of a stifling family dynamic to create beauty, and there, right in the center of the article, was a photo. It was not a photo of me. It was a photo of the Option C mock-up I had created for Brianna. I had posted it on my portfolio page as a recent work sample, changing the names to James and Bella to protect client privacy, but the design was unmistakable. The font, the layout, the specific way the date, June 12th, was justified to the right. "Maya," I said, my voice low. "This photo, this is the design for my brother's wedding." "I know," Maya said. "That is the best part. It is public now. Everyone is sharing it. It is the most read article on their site today." I hung up. I sat there, my heart pounding a rhythm against my ribs that felt like a countdown. If Brianna saw this, she would know. She would recognize her sign. She would read the story about the designer who was erased by her family. And if my mother saw it, the rest of the day was a blur of anxiety and anticipation. I checked the view count on the article. 5,000 views, 10,000 views. It was going viral locally. At 4:45 in the afternoon, my phone rang. I looked at the screen. Mom. I had not deleted her number. I had just watched it in silence for 6 months. The phone vibrated against the desk. Buzz, buzz, buzz. I stared at it. This was it. She had seen the article. She had seen the design. She had put 2 and 2 together. I picked up the phone. I swiped the green button. I did not say hello. I did not say Mom. Lark and Linen Studio, I said. My voice was cool, professional, indistinguishable from the voice of a stranger. There was a silence on the other end, a thick, heavy silence. Jean? Her voice was smaller than I remembered. It lacked the usual commanding edge. It sounded confused, like she was trying to tune a radio station and hearing static. This is Jean, I said. How can I help you? It is Mom, she said. I did not respond. I let the silence stretch. I let it become uncomfortable. I let her sit in the void she had created. I saw the article, she said. Her voice gained a little strength, a little of that familiar self-righteousness. Your Aunt Jane sent it to me. She follows that website. Okay, I said. Jean, I had no idea, she said. I had no idea you were doing this. I waited for the apology. I waited for her to say, I had no idea you were hurting, or I had no idea we drove you away. The designs, she continued, her voice shifting. It became brighter. It became the voice she used when she found a designer handbag at a thrift store. They are incredible. The article says you are booked solid. It says you are the most sought-after designer in Raleigh right now. I gripped the phone tighter. She was not calling to apologize. She was calling because I was successful. She was calling because suddenly, the daughter she wished did not exist was headline news. I was no longer a burden. I was an asset. I was something she could brag about. I am very busy, I said. Was there a specific reason you called? Well, she said, stumbling a bit over my coldness. I saw the picture in the article, the black and gold sign. It looks exactly like the one Brianna showed me, the one she ordered for the wedding. She paused. Jean, are you doing Ryan's wedding? The question hung there. I could lie. I could deny it. I could hang up. But the time for hiding was over. The article had outed me. The design had outed me. Yes, I said. Brianna hired me. She liked my portfolio. Does she know? Mom asked. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Does she know you are... you? No, I said. She thinks I am just a vendor. She thinks I am Jean from Lark and Linen. I heard my mother let out a breath. It was a sigh of relief. Oh, thank goodness, she said. That would be so awkward. Jean, you have to promise me you will not say anything. We do not want to upset her before the big day. She is already so stressed. I closed my eyes. Even now, even with my success plastered on a website, even with the evidence of my talent staring her in the face, her first instinct was not to bridge the gap. It was to protect the lie. It was to protect Ryan. I am a professional, I said. I deliver what the client pays for. Good, she said. That is good. And Jean, we should talk, after the wedding, when things settle down. Your father and I, well, we were surprised. But we are proud. This business, it looks like it makes good money. It looks like it makes good money. There it was, the hook, the only thing that ever mattered to them. I have to go, I said. I have a client meeting. Wait, she said. Jean, just make sure the signs are nice. Make sure they are perfect. We want this day to be special. Don't worry, I said. They will be unforgettable. I hung up. I looked at the phone in my hand. My hands were not shaking anymore. The last vestige of hope, that tiny, stupid pilot light that had been flickering in my chest, finally went out. She did not care that I was gone. She cared that I was back with a price tag attached. She cared that I could be useful to the wedding. She cared that I kept my mouth shut so their perfect family portrait remained unblemished. I turned back to my computer. I opened the file for the seating chart. I looked at the list of names Brianna had sent me. Table 1, the happy couple. Table 2, parents of the groom. I zoomed in on the vector lines. Make sure they are perfect, she had said. Oh, mother, I whispered to the empty room. They will be perfect. They will be the most perfect trap you have ever walked into. I picked up my stylus. I had work to do. I had to finish the signs. And then I had to prepare the other package, the one that would be delivered not to the venue, but to the truth. The game had changed. They knew I was the designer. They thought they had me under control. They thought I was compliant. They had no idea that I was not building a wedding. I was building an execution. The follow-up call came 3 days after the initial discovery. On a humid Saturday morning in late May, I was in my studio, which was actually just the second bedroom of the new apartment I had rented 2 weeks ago, a space paid for entirely by the deposits from strangers who wanted their weddings to look perfect. My phone buzzed. It was my mother again. I let it ring 3 times before picking up. I was sanding the edges of a frosted acrylic sheet, the fine white dust coating my hands like powdered sugar. Larkin linen, I answered, keeping my voice stripped of any familiarity. Jean, it is Mom, she said. She sounded breathless, the way she always did when she was trying to organize chaos into a shape she could control. I just wanted to touch base, about the logistics. I sent the delivery schedule to Brianna yesterday, I said, blowing the dust off the plastic. Everything will be at the venue by 10 in the morning on the 12th. Right, I saw that, she said quickly. But I meant personal logistics. I stopped sanding. The room was silent except for the hum of the air conditioner. Personal logistics? I repeated. Well, she started, and I could hear the hesitation, the gears turning in her head as she tried to calculate the social cost of her next sentence. Your father and I were wondering, are you planning to stay? For the reception? As a guest? It was the question I had been waiting for. It was the litmus test. If she said, Jean, we miss you. Please come home. Please sit with us. I might have faltered. I might have felt a crack in the armor I had spent 6 months welding to my skin, but she did not say that. She asked if I was planning to stay. It was a risk assessment. She was trying to figure out if she needed to add a chair to table 2, or if she could breathe easy knowing the heavy atmosphere would be absent. Do you want me to stay? I asked. The silence on the other end was deafening. It lasted only 2 seconds, but in those 2 seconds, the truth screamed. Of course, you are family, she said. But the words were hollow. They were scripted. They were the same tone she used when she told a neighbor their ugly baby was cute. But we know you are busy, and with the business taking off, and the awkwardness with Ryan, we just did not want you to feel obligated. Obligated. She was giving me an out. She was practically shoving me through the exit door before I had even entered the building. She was terrified that I would show up with my intensity and my dark clouds and ruin the golden glow of Ryan's big day. She wanted the signs I made, but she did not want the daughter who made them. I closed my eyes and smiled. It was a sharp, cold smile. You are right, I said smoothly. I am incredibly busy. June is my peak season. I have 3 other weddings that weekend. I heard the exhale. It was long and audible. It was the sound of a woman dropping a heavy bag of groceries after a long walk. Oh, she said, her voice instantly lighter, brighter. Well, that is amazing, Jean. 3 weddings? You are really doing it, aren't you? I am, I said. So, you will just drop the things off? She asked, confirming the perimeter. I will be there to ensure installation is perfect, I said. I handle all my high-end clients personally. I will make sure everything is set up, the angles are right, and the lighting hits the gold leaf correctly. Then I will leave before the ceremony starts. Perfect, she said. The words slipped out too fast. She caught herself. I mean, that sounds like a very professional plan. We would love to see you, of course, but business is business. Exactly, I said. Business is business. Okay, well, I will let Ryan know not to worry about the head count for you, she said. We are so proud of you. Jean, really, the signs look beautiful. Thank you, I said. Goodbye, honey. Goodbye. I hung up. I looked at the phone, then set it down on the workbench. She was relieved. She was actually happy that I was not coming. She had chosen the aesthetic over the bloodline. She wanted the beautiful welcome sign that said, "Welcome to the beginning of forever," more than she wanted the person whose name was on the birth certificate in her safe. I picked up the sanding block again. I attacked the acrylic with renewed vigor. The friction made the plastic hot under my fingers. They wanted the image. They wanted the facade. Fine, I would give them the most beautiful facade they had ever seen. But every facade has a structure underneath, and I was going to make sure the foundation was rotten. I looked at the large welcome sign leaning against the wall. It was the centerpiece, 36 inches tall. Option C in all its glory, sharp, modern, expensive, Ryan and Brianna, June 12th, the Soundside Club. It was transparent, except for the lettering. It was meant to be placed on a gold easel, allowing the ocean view to be seen through it. I walked over to my supply shelf. I pulled out a sheet of vellum paper, translucent, high quality. I pulled out a small, sleek envelope made of heavy cardstock in a shade of slate blue that perfectly matched Brianna's color palette. I sat down at my computer. I opened a blank document. I did not want to write a manifesto. I did not want to write a scream. I needed something quiet. Something that would slide under the door of their consciousness and detonate later. When the silence returned, I typed, to the bride, "You do not know me, but you have paid me. You hired me to build the signage for your perfect day. You admired my lines. You admired my precision. You chose option C because it looked like power. You were right. It is power. It is the power of a woman who had to rebuild herself from zero. I am the ghost in the hallway. I am the heavy air in the kitchen. I am the sister your husband has not mentioned in 6 months, and the daughter your in-laws were relieved to erase from the guest list. I made these signs with the hands they claimed were useless. I built this business with the silence they gave me. I did not come today to ruin your wedding. I came to show you that I exist, and to tell you that the family you are marrying into has a habit of making people disappear when they become inconvenient. Ask Ryan about the truck. Ask Martha about the espresso machine. Ask them about Jean. Welcome to the family. Sincerely, Jean Hayes, Lark and Linen Studio. I printed it on the vellum. The ink was dark and stark against the milky paper. I folded it once, sharp and precise. I slid it into the slate blue envelope. I took the envelope to the welcome sign. I turned the sign over. The back was just as polished as the front. I took a small strip of double-sided adhesive tape, the kind that is strong but removable. I adhered the envelope to the back of the sign, right behind the thickest part of the gold vinyl lettering of their names. If you looked at the sign from the front, you could not see it. The gold vinyl blocked it perfectly. It was invisible to the guests. It was invisible to the photographer. But when the wedding was over, when Brianna or her planner took the sign down to pack it away as a keepsake, because brides always keep the welcome sign, she would turn it over, and she would find it. It was marked, in elegant gold calligraphy, "Read after the wedding." It was a time bomb set for the honeymoon phase. I stood back and admired my work. It was invisible. It was deadly. It was perfect. But I was not done. Emotional revenge was one thing. Financial justice was another. I walked to my filing cabinet. I unlocked the bottom drawer. I pulled out the manila folder that had been growing thicker over the last 6 months. The evidence. I took out the credit report from November. I took out the affidavit of fraud I had notarized but not filed. I took out the screenshots of the transaction history, the hotel, the electronics, the deposit for this very wedding. I took out the printout of the car loan inquiry co-signed by Jean Hayes. I made copies of everything. I put the copies into a separate, larger envelope. This one was not blue. This one was plain, legal brown. I drafted a cover letter for this one too. This one was not poetic. It was transactional. To Ryan and Martha and Robert Hayes. Enclosed is a record of the debt incurred in my name during my absence. The total stands at $52,430, including the truck loan. I have not filed police reports. Yet, I am giving you a choice. You can arrange a payment plan with me directly, legally binding and notarized, to assume this debt and pay it off within 24 months, or I will file the fraud affidavits, and the police will come for Ryan regarding the felony identity theft for the vehicle. This is not a negotiation. This is an invoice. Jean, I sealed the brown envelope. I would not leave this one at the wedding. That would be tacky. I would mail it. I would drop it in the post box on the morning of the wedding, so it would arrive at their house while they were still hung over from the champagne, waiting for them like a hangover that would never go away. Later that afternoon, Maya came over. She brought takeout Thai food and a bottle of cheap wine. She looked at the welcome sign leaning against the wall, the gold letters catching the afternoon light. "It is beautiful," she said, chewing on a spring roll. In a twisted, sociopathic kind of way. "It is professional," I corrected her. "Jean," she said, her voice turning serious. She put her fork down. "Are you sure about the letter? The one on the back?" "Yes," I said. "They are going to spin this." She warned. "You know they are. They are going to say you are crazy. They are going to say you are jealous. They are going to tell Brianna that you are just the unstable sister who is trying to ruin their happiness. They will gaslight her. Jean, they are pros at it." I took a sip of wine. It was sour, but I liked the bite. "I know they will try," I said. "They will say, I am sensitive. They will say I am dramatic. They will say, I made it all up." I tapped the brown envelope sitting on my desk. "That is why I have this," I said. "Gaslighting works when it is word against word. It does not work when it is word against math. It does not work against IP addresses and timestamps and notarized signatures. They will hate you," Maya said. "They already wish I did not exist," I said. "Hate is an upgrade. Hate means they have to acknowledge I'm here." Maya looked at me for a long time. Then she picked up her glass and clinked it against mine. "To existing," she said. "To the floor," I replied. The next 2 weeks were a blur of production. I finished the seating chart, a massive, intricate grid of names. I finished the table numbers. I finished the bar menus. Every single item was perfect. Every edge was polished. Every letter was straight. I looked at the names on the seating chart. Table 1, Ryan Hayes, Brianna Cole. Table 2, Robert Hayes, Martha Hayes. I ran my finger over their names. I packed everything into protective foam. I loaded the boxes into the cargo van I had rented. It was June 11th, the day before the wedding. I stood in the center of my studio. The room was empty now. The clutter of production cleared away. I looked at my reflection in the dark window. I was wearing black work pants and a black polo shirt with the Lark and Linen logo embroidered on the chest. I looked efficient. I looked invisible. I was not the girl who cried over peanut butter anymore. I was not the girl who left the house with grocery bags in her hands. I was the vendor, and I was about to make a delivery that would cost them everything. I turned off the lights. The studio went dark, save for the street lamp outside casting a long, sharp shadow across the floor. "See you tomorrow," I whispered to the silence, and for the first time in my life. The silence did not feel heavy. It felt like the deep breath before the plunge. The drive to the Outer Banks took 4 hours, a straight shot east through the flat, pine-scrubbed landscape of North Carolina. I drove a rented white cargo van, the kind with no windows in the back, just a cavernous steel belly filled with the physical manifestations of my brother's debt. It was June 12th. The sky was a hard, brilliant blue, the kind that hurts your eyes if you look at it too long. The air conditioner in the van rattled, struggling against the humidity rising off the asphalt. But I did not mind the heat. I felt cold. I felt the precise, icy temperature of a surgical theater before the first incision. The Soundside Club was exactly what I expected. It was a sprawling estate of cedar shakes and white trim, perched on the edge of the Sound where the water moved like liquid glass. It smelled of money. It smelled of salt and old wood, and the specific, expensive perfume of hydrangeas that had been forced to bloom on schedule. I did not pull up to the front entrance. The front was for guests. The front was for the people who were invited, the people who belonged in the frame of the family photo. I pulled around the side. Following the discreet signs marked deliveries and service, I parked next to a floral truck and a catering van. A man in a chef's coat was smoking a cigarette by the dumpster. He nodded at me as I hopped out. "Event vendor?" he asked. "Larkin Linen," I said. "Signage." "Loading dock is to the left," he said, exhaling a plume of smoke. "Elevator code is 4492. I paused. 4492. It was the last 4 digits of the credit card my mother had stolen. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of humor. "Thanks," I said. "I like the loading dock. I like the concrete floors and the scuffed walls and the smell of cardboard. There is an honesty to the back of the house that does not exist in the ballroom. Here, we were just workers. We were the invisible hands that built the illusion. I was not Jean Hayes. The disappointment. I was Jean, the vendor. And vendors are respected as long as they deliver. I began to unload. The welcome sign was heavy. I carried it with both hands, the protective foam still wrapping the edges. I took the elevator up to the main level and walked into the ballroom. It was breathtaking, in a generic, Pinterest-perfect way. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the water. The tables were already set with champagne linens and slate-blue napkins. The florists were arranging towering centerpieces of white roses and eucalyptus. I found the event planner, a woman named Sarah, who wore a headset and looked like she had not slept in 3 days. "Larkin Linen?" she asked, checking a clipboard. "That is me," I said. "Great, you are right on time. We need the welcome sign in the foyer, the seating chart on the east wall, and the table numbers, well, on the tables." "I got it," I said. I went to work. I set up the gold easel in the foyer. I unwrapped the sign. Option C gleamed in the morning light. The black letters were sharp, the gold accents catching the sun. Ryan and Brianna, June 12th. I ran my finger over the vinyl. It was smooth, perfect. I reached behind the sign. Checking the hidden envelope, it was there. Secure against the acrylic, the vellum note inside waited like a dormant virus. Read, "After the wedding." "Jean?" The voice came from the staircase. I turned. Brianna was running down the stairs. She was wearing a silk robe embroidered with bride on the back, and her hair was set in rollers. She looked young. She looked happy. She looked like someone who believed the world was a kind place. She reached me and threw her arms around my neck. "Oh my God, it is even better in person," she squealed, pulling back to look at the sign. "John, seriously, you are a wizard. This looks so expensive." "It is substantial," I said, using the word I had practiced. "We wanted it to have weight." "It is perfect," she said. She grabbed my hand and squeezed it. Her palm was warm and slightly damp. "Thank you so much. I know it was last minute, and I know I was a pain about the fonts. You were a discerning client," I said. "I appreciate that," she laughed. "That is a nice way of saying I was a bridezilla. But seriously, thank you. You have no idea how stressful this has been. Ryan's family. Well, let us just say I needed one thing to go right today." "I am glad I could help," I said. My voice was steady. My pulse was 60 beats per minute. I was looking into the eyes of the woman who was marrying my brother, the woman who was the beneficiary of my stolen identity, and I felt nothing but a distant, professional pity. "Where is the groom?" I asked. "I need to check the placement of the bar signs with him, or should I just use my judgment?" "Oh, he is around somewhere," Brianna said, waving a hand. "Probably hiding from his mother. She is on a rampage about the appetizers, as if summoned by the mention of his name." The double doors to the groomsmen's suite opened. Ryan walked out. He was wearing a tuxedo. He looked handsome, I supposed, in the way that people who have never had to work for anything often do. He had that polished, easy grace that comes from a lifetime of being told he was the oxygen in the room. He was laughing at something one of his friends had said. He adjusted his cufflinks, then he looked up. He saw Brianna. He smiled. Then he saw me. The smile did not fade. It vanished. It was wiped from his face as if someone had hit a delete button. He stopped walking. His foot hovered in the air for a fraction of a second before he put it down, awkwardly, stumbling slightly. The color drained from his face. He looked from me to the sign, then back to me. He looked as if he were seeing a ghost, or perhaps a creditor, which, in a way, I was both. "Jean?" he whispered. The word was barely audible across the foyer. Brianna turned to him, beaming. "Babe, look, the sign is here. Isn't it gorgeous? This is Jean, the designer I told you about, the one who saved us." Ryan did not move. He stood 10 feet away, frozen in the amber of his own guilt. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. He looked at my face, the face he had not seen in 7 months, the face of the sister whose credit score bought the truck he drove here today. "Jean?" he said again, louder this time, his voice cracking. Brianna looked between us, her brow furrowing. The smile faltered. Do you two know each other?" she asked. The silence that followed stretched out like a rubber band about to snap. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator in the bar. I could hear the distant cry of a seagull. I looked at Ryan. I looked him dead in the eye. I saw the panic rising in him. I saw him calculating the cost of the lie he was about to tell. I smiled. It was my customer service smile. "We used to live under the same roof," I said. It was the truth. It was the absolute, unvarnished truth. We had lived under the same roof. We had eaten at the same table. But we had not been family. Not really. Brianna blinked. "Oh, small world. You mean like college roommates? Or in the same apartment complex?" "Something like that," I said. Ryan looked like he was going to vomit. He took a step forward, his hands raising slightly in a gesture of surrender or defense. "Jean," he choked out, "what are you doing here?" "I am delivering the signage," I said, gesturing to the easel. "Per our contract." "Contract?" Ryan repeated, dazed. "The one you paid the deposit for," I said. $500, electronic transfer." I saw the realization hit him. He knew that I knew. Before he could speak, the elevator doors opened again. My mother and father stepped out. My mother was wearing a champagne-colored dress that cost more than my first car. My father was in a suit that looked tailored. They were arguing about something, probably the temperature of the room. But they stopped when they saw the group gathered in the foyer. "Ryan, there you are," my mother started, marching forward. "The florist is asking about the boutonnieres, and I told her—" She stopped. She saw the back of my head first. I was wearing my black larkin linen polo shirt. She did not recognize me from behind, but then I turned. "Hello, Martha. Hello, Robert," I said. My mother gasped. Her hand flew to her chest, clutching her pearls as if they were a lifeline. My father's jaw went slack. They stood there. The three of them. Father, mother, son, facing me. It was a tableau of terror. They looked at me not with love, not with relief, but with the sheer, unadulterated fear of people who know their sins have come home to roost. Brianna looked completely lost. "Wait, you guys know her too? Martha? Bob?" My mother's eyes darted around the room. She was looking for witnesses. She was checking to see if anyone important was watching. "Jean," my mother hissed. Her voice was a mixture of fury and desperation. "I thought you said, I thought you were just dropping things off. I am, I said calmly. I am just ensuring the installation is correct. Quality control. You? My father started, his face turning a mottled red. You are the designer? Larkin Linen, I said. It is a growing business. Why didn't you say anything? Brianna asked, her voice rising in pitch. Why is everyone acting so weird? Jean, are you a friend of the family? I looked at Brianna. She was innocent in this. She was collateral damage. I am just the vendor, Brianna, I said gently. I am the person who makes sure the names are spelled right. I turned back to my family. I held their gaze. I let them see the steel in my spine. I let them see that the girl who used to cry in the mudroom was dead and buried. Everything is set up, I said. The seating chart is on the east wall. Table numbers are placed. The bar menus are on the counter. I took a step toward the door. Jean, wait, Ryan said. He sounded desperate. We need to talk. Please. We do not have anything to talk about. Ryan, I said. Not here. Not today. You can't just... My mother started, then stopped, realizing she couldn't finish the sentence without revealing everything to Brianna. I can, I said. And I am. I walked over to Brianna. I took her hand again. You look beautiful, I said. And you deserve a day that is honest. She stared at me, her eyes wide and confused. Thank you? I left a little something for you, I said, lowering my voice so only she could hear. On the back of the welcome sign, do not look at it now. Look at it after the wedding, when things are quiet. What is it? She whispered. A gift, I said. Clarity. I let go of her hand. I walked past my parents. I did not stop. I did not look at them. I could feel their eyes burning into the side of my face. I could feel their panic radiating off them like heat. My father made a move to grab my arm. I stopped. I did not turn my head. I just spoke, low and cold. Do not touch me, I said. Unless you want to explain to the bride why her signage designer is filing a police report for assault on her wedding day. He froze. His hand dropped. I walked out the double doors. The heat of the day hit me, but it felt good. It felt clean. I walked to the van. I climbed into the driver's seat. My hands were steady as I put the key in the ignition. I looked in the rearview mirror. No one had followed me out. Of course not. They were trapped in there. They were trapped in the prison of their own image, forced to smile and shake hands and pretend that the foundation wasn't cracking beneath their feet. I started the engine. I drove away from the Soundside Club. I drove away from the champagne and the flowers and the lies. I had done my job. I had built the stage. I had set the props. And I had planted the bomb. Now, all I had to do was wait for the silence to return, because that is when the explosion would be loudest. The silence lasted for exactly 72 hours following the wedding. I was back in Raleigh, sitting in my studio, fulfilling an order for a corporate gala. I was cutting vinyl for a seating chart that listed 200 employees, none of whom likely knew the person sitting next to them. My hands were steady. My phone sat on the corner of the desk, screen up, silent. I knew the timeline. Saturday was the wedding. Sunday was the brunch and the cleanup. Sunday afternoon is when the bride usually takes down the welcome sign to pack it in her car, wanting to keep it as a memento of the best day of her life. Sunday night is when she would flip it over. Monday and Tuesday would be the shockwaves, the denial, the hushed arguments in hotel rooms. Wednesday was for the confrontation. At 2 p.m. on Wednesday, my phone lit up. Ryan. I picked it up. I did not say hello. I just pressed the button and held the device to my ear. Listening to the sound of my brother's breathing, it was ragged, fast, the breathing of a man who had been running away from something and had finally hit a wall. You ruin everything, he said. His voice was not loud. It was trembling with a mixture of rage and genuine disbelief. You ruin everything you touch. Do you know that? Hello, Ryan, I said. How was the wedding? The wedding? He choked out a laugh that sounded like a sob. The wedding was perfect until Brianna looked at the back of the sign. Why did you do that? Why couldn't you just leave us alone? I did leave you alone, I said. I left you alone for 7 months. You were the ones who invited me back into your lives. You were the ones who used my credit to finance the celebration. She is freaking out. Jean, Ryan shouted now, losing his composure. She is asking me why I never talked about you. She is asking me why Mom and Dad acted like they saw a ghost. She thinks I'm a liar. You are a liar, I said simply. You are lying to her about your finances. You are lying to her about your family history. You are lying to her about who signed the loan for that truck you drove away in. I was going to tell her, he insisted. It was the plea of a child caught with his hand in the jar. I was going to explain it later. When the time was right, you did not have to drop a bomb on our honeymoon. The truth is not a bomb. Ryan, I said. It is just the truth. It only feels like a weapon because you have built your house on a foundation of lies. She is packing a bag, he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. We are supposed to be in St. Lucia. Instead, we are in a hotel room in Nag's Head, and she is packing a bag to go stay with her sister because she says she does not know who I am. That sounds like a problem for you to solve, I said. Fix this, he demanded. Tell her you are crazy. Tell her you made it up. Tell her you are just jealous and trying to stir up drama. Please, Jean, if you tell her that, she will believe you. Everyone knows you are the difficult one. I closed my eyes. Even now, even with his marriage crumbling, his instinct was to use me as the scapegoat. I am done fixing things for you, I said. Check your mail. Ryan, the brown envelope should be arriving at Mom and Dad's house today. I hung up. I blocked his number. Not permanently, just for the day. I needed to control the flow of information. An hour later, the ripple effect began. My Aunt Jane, the one who posted the photo, sent me a message on Facebook. Jean, I heard something happened at the wedding. Your mother is hysterical. She says you left a nasty note, but Cousin Mike said he saw the car loan papers you sent. Is it true? Did Ryan really do that? I did not reply. I let the silence do the work. The family was fracturing. The carefully curated image of the Hayes family was developing hairline cracks. Half of them would believe my mother's narrative that Jean was unstable and vindictive, but the other half? The half that had always wondered why Ryan had a new truck while working part-time? They would start to do the math. At 5 p.m, a voicemail appeared from my mother. I had not answered her call. I sat and listened to the recording. Jean, she began. Her voice was tight, controlled, but I could hear the tremor underneath. We received the package, the brown one. She paused. I could hear ice clinking in a glass in the background. She was drinking. We need to talk about this, she continued, but I want to say one thing about what you wrote in that letter to Brianna. About the kitchen. Another pause, long, heavy. I did not think you hurt us, she said. That was it. She did not say. I am sorry I said it. She did not say. It was a cruel joke. She did not say. We love you, she said. I did not think you hurt us. The implication was clear. The sin was not in the thought, or the words. The sin was in my presence. If I had not been there to hear it, their conscience would be clear. They were not sorry they wished I did not exist. They were sorry I found out about it. I saved the voicemail. It was not an apology. It was evidence of character. I opened my laptop. I composed an email. I addressed it to my father, my mother, and Ryan. Subject: settlement meeting. I am not interested in discussing feelings. I am not interested in your justifications. I am interested in the $52,430 you owe me. We will meet on Friday at 10 a.m, not at your house, not at my studio. We will meet at the legal library downtown, room 4B. I have reserved it. Bring a pen, and bring a plan for repayment, if you do not show up. I file the fraud affidavits with the police by noon on Friday. Jean, I sent it. The next morning, Thursday, I was preparing for the meeting, organizing my files. When my burner phone buzzed, it was a text message. The number was unfamiliar. Hi, Jean. This is Brianna. I stared at the screen. I had expected silence from her. I had expected her to circle the wagons, to stand by her man, to buy into the story that I was the villain. That is what people usually do. They protect their investment. Can we meet? She wrote. Without Ryan, without your parents, just us. I hesitated. This could be a trap. She could be coming to scream at me. She could be coming to beg me to drop the debt so they could buy a house. Why? I typed back. 3 dots danced on the screen. Because I asked Ryan about the truck loan, and he told me you co-signed it as a wedding gift, she replied. But your letter said it was fraud. I need to know which version is the truth before I sign our marriage license. We haven't turned it into the courthouse yet. I sat up straight. They hadn't turned in the license. Legally, they were not married yet. Starbucks on Fayetteville Street. I typed, 30 minutes. I will be there. She wrote. I arrived first. I ordered a black coffee. I sat in a booth in the back, watching the door. Brianna walked in 10 minutes later. She looked wrecked. The glowing bride from 2 days ago was gone. In her place was a young woman wearing sweatpants and sunglasses, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. She looked like she hadn't slept since the wedding night. She spotted me and walked over. She slid into the booth opposite me. She took off her sunglasses. Her eyes were red and swollen. Hi, she said. Hi, I replied. She looked at me. Really looked at me. Searching my face for the instability Ryan had surely warned her about. He says you are jealous, she said bluntly. He says you have always been jealous of him because he was the favorite. He says you co-signed the loan to be nice, but now you are regretting it and trying to blackmail them. That is a very detailed story, I said. Is it true? She asked. I did not answer with words. I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder. It was a copy of the evidence I had sent to my parents. I slid it across the table. Look at the date on the loan application, I said. December 1st. She opened the folder. Her hands were shaking. She found the document. December 1st, she read. Now look at this, I said, sliding a second paper across. This is my bus ticket to Raleigh, dated October 29th. She looked at the ticket. She looked at the loan. I was not in the state. Brianna, I said. I was living on a friend's couch. I had no phone. I had no contact with them. How could I have walked into a Ford dealership and signed papers with a brother I was not speaking to? She stared at the dates. The math was cold. The math did not lie. And this, I said, sliding the credit card statement across. The Apple Card, open November 14th. Look at the charges. She scanned the list. Her finger stopped on one line. Breville Barista Express, $749. Her breath hitched. The espresso machine, she whispered. Your mom gave me that. She said she saved up for it. She bought it with my credit, I said. She stole my identity to buy you a gift to make you like her. Brianna closed the folder. She looked sick. I asked him, she said, her voice trembling. Last night, I asked him how he got approved for the truck loan when he works 20 hours a week at a surf shop. He told me he had investments. He told me he was good with money. He is good with paperwork, I said. There is a difference. She put her head in her hands. I married a fraud. You had a ceremony with a fraud, I corrected her. You said you haven't filed the license. She looked up. No, I have it in my bag. I was supposed to drop it off today. Then you have a choice, I said. I took a sip of my coffee. I did not want to push her. This was her tragedy, not mine. I was just the narrator. Why didn't you tell me sooner? She asked. Why wait until the wedding day? That was cruel. Jean? Maybe, I admitted. But if I had told you 3 months ago, would you have believed me? Or would you have believed the fiancé you were in love with? She looked down at the table. I would have believed him. Exactly, I said. You needed to see the show. You needed to see how good they are at pretending, and then you needed to see the receipt. They acted like you didn't exist, she said softly. For months, I sat at their dinner table. I looked at their family photos. They just erased you. That is what they do, I said. They erase anything that makes the air heavy. And right now, Brianna, you are looking pretty heavy to them. She laughed. It was a bitter, sharp sound. Yeah, she said. I guess I am. She reached for the folder. Can I keep this? She asked. It is a copy, I said. Keep it. She slid it into her bag. She stood up. She looked at me, and for the first time, I saw a flash of the steel I had found in myself. Thank you, she said, for the clarity. Good luck, I said. She walked out of the coffee shop. She did not look back. I watched her go. I did not know if she would leave him. Love is a complicated, stupid thing, and people forgive terrible crimes to avoid being alone. But at least she knew. At least she was not walking into the dark blindfolded. I checked my email. A reply had come in from my father. Jean, we will be there on Friday. We want to resolve this quietly. Please do not contact the police. Dad, I smiled. They were not coming because they missed me. They were not coming because they wanted to reconcile. They were coming because they were terrified. They were terrified that the story of the perfect family was about to be exposed as a fraud. They were terrified that their friends at the country club would find out their son was a felon and their daughter was the victim. They were motivated by shame, and shame, as I had learned, was a much stronger currency than love. I finished my coffee. It was cold, but I drank it anyway. Tomorrow was Friday. Tomorrow was the end of the line. I walked out of the coffee shop and into the bright sunlight. I felt lighter than I had in years. I had not just built a floor, I had built a fortress. And tomorrow, I was going to make them pay rent. I arrived at the coffee shop at 9:45 in the morning. It was a neutral location, a place with high ceilings, exposed brick, and enough ambient noise to drown out a conversation, but not enough to hide a confession. I chose a table in the back corner, one that offered a clear view of the entrance but felt removed from the flow of foot traffic. I ordered a black coffee. I sat with my back straight against the wooden chair. For 29 years, I had slouched. I had shrunk myself to fit into the negative space my family left for me. I had walked with my shoulders hunched, apologizing for the space I occupied. Not today. Today, my spine was steel. Today, I was not a daughter waiting for allowance. I was a creditor waiting for payment. At 10 o'clock exactly, the door opened. My parents walked in. My father, Robert, wore a polo shirt and khakis. But he looked smaller than I remembered. His shoulders were slumped, and his face was drawn, gray with stress. My mother, Martha, wore large sunglasses and a scarf, as if she were a celebrity trying to avoid the paparazzi, or perhaps a criminal trying to avoid identification. They spotted me. They hesitated. Then, they walked over. They pulled out the chairs opposite me. The scraping sound of wood against the floor seemed incredibly loud. John, my father said. He did not look me in the eye. He looked at my coffee cup. Dad, I replied. Mom, my mother took off her sunglasses. Her eyes were rimmed with red. She looked at me with a pleading expression that I had seen her use 1,000 times, usually when she wanted a discount at a department store, or when she wanted me to change a shift to accommodate Ryan. We are glad you agreed to meet, my mother said. Her voice was trembling. We have been so worried. This whole thing, it has just been a nightmare. A nightmare implies you had no control over it, I said. This was not a dream. It was a series of choices. Look, Jean, my father interrupted. Finding a bit of his old bluster, he leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. We know mistakes were made, on both sides. We are willing to admit that things got out of hand with Ryan's finances. But this legal threat? Sending files to Brianna? It is extreme. Families work things out. Families do not sue each other. Both sides? I asked. My voice was low, level, and devoid of heat. Please, enlighten me. What was my mistake? Was it the part where I worked in a warehouse to pay my own bills? Or was it the part where I left quietly so you could enjoy your dinner without my heavy presence? You abandoned us, my mother cried out, then lowered her voice as people at the nearby tables glanced over. You just disappeared. Jean, we didn't know if you were dead or alive. And then Ryan, he was spiraling. He needed help. We thought you would want to help him. You always helped him. So you signed my name, I said. We borrowed your credit, my father corrected. We intended to pay it back. Ryan had a plan. He was going to refinance the truck once his investments paid off. Ryan works at a surf shop, I said. He does not have investments. He has delusions, and you funded them with my identity. I reached into my bag. I pulled out the file. It was thick. It was heavy. It contained the notarized affidavit of fraud, the credit card statements, and the loan documents. I placed it on the table. Thud. This is not a debate, I said. I am not here to argue about your intentions. Intentions do not pay the bank. I opened the folder. I turned it so it faced them. $52,430, I said, pointing to the bottom line. That is the total. That includes the truck, the credit card debt, the interest, and the legal fees I have incurred preparing this case. My father looked at the number. He paled. We do not have that kind of cash sitting around, John. You know that? Then you will sell something, I said. Sell the boat, sell the second car, take out a home equity line. I do not care how you get it, but you will get it. John, please. My mother wept. Be reasonable. We are your parents. And I am the person you wish did not exist, I said. The table went silent. My father looked up, his eyes flashing with sudden anger. That was one comment made in frustration. And you have held onto it like a weapon for months. You are punishing us for a moment of weakness. I am not punishing you for the comment, I said. I am punishing you for what happened after. I am punishing you for the 3 months you didn't look for me. I am punishing you for the fact that when you realized I was gone. Your first instinct wasn't to call the police, but to call American Express. We didn't think you would find out, my mother blurted out. Exactly, I said. You thought I was gone. You thought I was negligible. I leaned forward. I looked my father in the eye. You said you wished I didn't exist, I said clearly. Well, Dad, here is the problem with that wish. If I do not exist, then who is paying these bills? He opened his mouth to speak, but no sound came out. He closed it. He looked down at the table. He realized, finally, the trap he had built for himself. He could not have it both ways. He could not have the invisible daughter and the visible credit score. If I am real enough to be sued by Ford Motor Credit, I continued, then I am real enough to demand respect. I pulled 3 documents from the back of the folder. Here is the agreement, I said. Number 1, I said, sliding the first paper across. You and Dad will assume full liability for the debt. You will sign a promissory note to me. You will pay me back in monthly installments of $2,000 until the balance is cleared. If you miss a payment, I file the fraud charges. $2,000? My father sputtered. That is a mortgage payment. It is the cost of doing business, I said. Number 2. I slid the second paper. Ryan isn't here, which I expected. He is a coward, but you will take this to him. It is a confession of judgment. He admits to the fraud. He signs it. You witness it. I keep it in my safe. If he ever tries to contact me, or Brianna, or lie about me again, I release it to the district attorney. He will go to jail, my mother whispered. Only if he bothers me, I said. If he stays away. It stays in the safe. And number 3, I slid the final paper. A no-contact order, for 6 months, no calls, no emails, unless it is a payment confirmation, No holiday invites, no guilt trips. I need space to breathe air that you haven't polluted." My mother looked at the papers. She wiped her eyes. She looked at me, and for a second, I saw a flicker of hope in her face. "And after 6 months?" she asked. "After 6 months, we can be a family again? You will come home?" I looked at her. She still didn't get it. She thought this was a negotiation for my return. She thought I was throwing a tantrum, and that once they paid the fine, I would come back to my room and be Jean again. "No," I said. The word hung in the air. "I am not doing this to fix the bridge," I said. "I am doing this to burn it down cleanly so the smoke does not choke me anymore." "What do you mean?" my father asked. "I mean that I am not coming back," I said. "I have my own life. I have my own business. I have friends who know I exist without checking a bank statement. This meeting isn't a reunion. It is a settlement." "But," my mother stammered, "but you are our daughter." "I was your daughter," I said. "Now, I am just Jean." My father picked up the pen. His hand was shaking. He looked at the document. He looked at the amount. $52,000. "Are you going to post this on the internet?" he asked quietly. "The article. The blog. Are you going to put our names out there? Are you going to tell everyone at the club that we stole from you?" I looked at him. He was terrified of the public shame. That was his only currency. "No," I said. He blinked, surprised. "You aren't?" "No," I said. "I do not need an audience to know I won. I do not need likes or comments to validate my reality. That is Ryan's game. That is your game." I sat back. "I just need the money," I said. "And the silence." My father let out a long breath. He looked at my mother. He nodded. He signed. He pushed the paper to my mother. She cried as she signed it, her tears spotting the ink. But she signed. She signed because she had no choice. She signed because for the first time in her life, she looked across the table and saw someone she could not manipulate. She saw a stranger. They pushed the papers back to me. I checked the signatures. I checked the dates. I put them back in the folder. I stood up. "You have the account number for the transfers," I said. "The first payment is due on the 1st of the month." "Jean," my mother said, standing up as well. She reached out a hand, as if to touch me. I took a step back. I did not flinch. I just moved out of range. "Goodbye, Martha," I said. "Goodbye, Robert." I turned and walked out of the coffee shop. I did not look back. I did not check to see if they were watching. I walked out into the sunlight of the city street. The air smelled of exhaust and roasted coffee and freedom. 3 months later, the sign on the door was made of frosted acrylic with champagne gold lettering. It was heavy. It was substantial. Larkin Linen Studio. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The space was small, a converted storefront in the arts district, but it was mine. The morning sun streamed through the large front window, illuminating the rows of drafting tables, the vinyl cutters, the shelves stacked with high-end paper and linen samples. I had 2 employees now, an intern named Sarah, who was meticulous with details, and a production assistant named Mike who could carry the heavy boards. I walked to the back of the studio, where a large mirror hung on the wall. It was framed in vintage gold. I had bought it with the first repayment check from my parents. I looked at my reflection. I saw a woman in a tailored blazer. I saw a woman with tired eyes but a sharp smile. I saw a woman who paid her own rent, fought her own battles, and built her own floor. I thought about the kitchen. I thought about the laughter. I thought about the girl standing in the mudroom, holding bags of milk, wishing she could disappear. She got her wish. That girl did disappear, and in her place, I appeared. My phone buzzed on the desk. It was an email from a new client. "Hi, Jean. I heard you are the best. I want something that makes a statement. I want everyone to know I am here." I smiled. "They used to wish I didn't exist," I whispered to the reflection in the glass. "Now I exist, and I charge extra for it." I turned away from the mirror and went to work. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from, so please leave a comment below sharing your location and your thoughts on Jean's revenge. If you enjoyed this story, please invite your friends to subscribe to the Nina Revenge Stories channel, like the video, and support us further by pressing the hype button so that the story in this video can be heard by even more people.